Are you ready for the grind of another season, 12s? Or are we already sweating the health of this roster before the first snap? Ian Rapoport confirmed today that the Seattle Seahawks have placed Nick Emenworry, Kenny Mcintosh, and Tyrone Broden on the physically unable to perform list as training camp kicks off. This is a tough blow for three guys fighting for critical roster spots, and honestly, there are really two things we need to break down here: what this means for their immediate future and how it shifts the depth chart. The more details surface, the harder it is to ignore the impact on our secondary and backfield. Smash that like button, subscribe, and drop your name and city in the comments because we are a new channel pushing toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single person helps us keep going. Let us get into it. As our Seahawks prepare for the grind of training camp, we have received some tough news regarding three players starting their season on the physically unable to perform list. According to Ian Rapoport, defensive back Nick Emenworry, running back Kenny Mcintosh, and cornerback Tyrone Broden have all been sidelined for now following their required physicals at the facility. This is a difficult development for a fan base that is eager to see these young men compete for roster spots. Emenworry is still fighting for a primary role in the secondary, while Mcintosh continues his long road back from a torn ACL sustained nearly a year ago. Meanwhile, Broden, who transitioned from wide receiver to cornerback after joining us as an undrafted free agent from Arkansas last year, needs as many reps as possible to prove he belongs on this team. The emotional toll on us as fans is palpable because we understand how vital these initial weeks are for building chemistry and securing a spot on the final roster. We know that if these players remain on the list when the season begins, they are locked out for at least 4 weeks. This is where it gets real, because the competition behind them is already heating up. With Emenworry out, players like Rodney Thomas II, Bud Clark, Julian Neal, and Noah Igbinoghene will be gunning for those opportunities. Likewise, the running back room will see increased looks for Emmanuel Wilson, George Holani, and Jadarian Price, while Mcintosh focuses on his recovery. We are left wondering if this injury setback will be the deciding factor for those fighting for the final spots on the roster. How will the coaching staff navigate the thin margins at nickel corner and running back while these specific men are forced to watch from the sidelines during these crucial opening sessions? The most concerning development is that Kenny Mcintosh remains trapped in a prolonged recovery cycle after suffering a torn ACL less than a year ago, casting significant doubt on his ability to carve out a meaningful role in Mike Macdonald's offense this season. We have seen players struggle to regain their explosive lateral quickness following such major knee surgery. And for a running back fighting for one of the final roster spots, every missed rep during camp is a setback that ripples across the entire depth charts. Think about it this way: when a young talent like Mcintosh hits the physically unable to perform list, it forces the front office to lean heavily on depth options like Emmanuel Wilson, who brings his own experience from the Green Bay Packers, and newcomers such as George Holani or Jadarian Price to shoulder the load. Behind closed doors, the coaching staff is surely evaluating whether the immediate need for healthy bodies outweighs the long-term potential of a player still finding his way back to full strength. The history of this organization shows that while we value loyalty to our developing players, the brutal reality of the NFL requires production that cannot wait for a lingering injury to resolve itself. Nick Emenworry also faces a difficult climb in the secondary as an undisclosed injury sidelines him during a critical window where he hoped to secure the nickel cornerback job. With Tyrone Broden also sidelined while attempting a complex transition from wide receiver to cornerback, the competition is wide open for hungry players like Rodney Thomas II or rookies Bud Clark and Julian Neal to prove they belong on this roster. We are currently watching the coaching staff shift their priorities in real time as they weigh current availability against the theoretical ceiling of our injured athletes who are missing vital developmental time. With the news broken by Ian Rapoport regarding our roster status, we shift our focus from the facts to the actual implications of these moves. And here's why that's a big deal for our organization as we head into the summer grind. Losing players like Nick Emenworry, Kenny Mcintosh, and Tyrone Broden during the initial physicals disrupts the chemistry Mike Macdonald needs to build early on. Emenworry was poised to compete for that nickel cornerback spot, and his absence immediately thrust names like Rodney Thomas II, Bud Clark, Julian Neal, and Noah Igbinoghene into the spotlight for increased reps. Meanwhile, the running back room takes a hit with Mcintosh sidelined as he continues his long recovery from an ACL injury, forcing the team to lean heavily on Emmanuel Wilson, George Holani, and Jadarian Price. This roster uncertainty ripples into our early season schedule, as we need a solidified rotation to handle the high-pressure matchups that define our path to the playoffs. We cannot afford to have defensive gaps against the potent offenses we face within our division, where every single possession determines our standing in the standings. If these men remain on the physically unable to perform list when the season kicks off, we face the reality of missing key depth for the opening 4 weeks. That timeline significantly complicates our defensive schemes and depth chart stability during the most critical portion of the calendar year. While this team possesses the talent to remain competitive, these early setbacks demand that our younger players step up and prove their readiness to contribute in real game scenarios immediately. We must remain vigilant, as the difference between a successful campaign and falling short often hinges on how effectively we manage these unexpected injuries before the actual competition begins against our rivals across the league. As we look at the latest news from Ian Rapoport regarding our roster, we see that Nick Emenwari, Kenny Mcintosh, and Tyrone Broden have been placed on the physically unable to perform list as camp begins. The upside of this conservative approach is that it allows our training staff to prioritize long-term recovery over short-term participation, ensuring these athletes are at full strength before they face the intensity of actual drills. By sidelining them now, we prevent avoidable setbacks that often plague players who rush back from lingering issues. However, the downside is quite apparent because every rep counts in a crowded room. What nobody is talking about is how this forced absence might jeopardize the roster security for players like Mcintosh, who is battling for depth behind others like Emmanuel Wilson, George Holani, or Jadarian Price. With Emenwari out, the secondary becomes a massive experiment as we watch Rodney Thomas II, Bud Clark, Julian Neal, and Noah Igbenegany fight for his potential nickel spot. Other teams around the league are certainly watching how we handle these specific depth chart shuffles, as internal competition often reveals hidden talent that could save a season. Here's where I land on this. While I understand the need for caution, I think the concern regarding Broden is slightly overblown. He is a raw prospect transitioning to a new position, and while he needs reps, his path to the final roster is already a steep climb regardless of this minor medical delay. The way I see it, the front office is simply playing the long game with our health. We need these guys healthy for the final stretch of the season rather than risking a flare-up in August. We will keep a very close eye on these three as they progress through their rehabilitation and prepare for their eventual return to the practice field later this summer. When you weigh the immediate reality of these medical reports against the long-term vision for our roster, the broader picture becomes clear regarding how this team handles adversity during this crucial transition period. As Seattle Seahawks fans, we should feel cautiously optimistic, as these placements are standard procedural steps to ensure our players reach full health rather than risking setbacks that could derail our competitive window over the next few seasons. It is far better to allow players like Nick Emenwari, Kenny Mcintosh, and Tyrone Broden to heal properly under supervision than to force them onto the field prematurely while they are still fighting for key roles in Mike Macdonald's defensive and offensive schemes. And honestly, this early caution speaks volumes about the front office prioritizing depth and durability. With Emenwari facing competition for that nickel spot and Mcintosh battling to prove his utility in the backfield, the door is now wide open for depth options like Emmanuel Wilson or rookie Bud Clark to step up and command attention during camp. This is the moment where we discover if our bench truly has the resilience required to compete at the highest level throughout a grueling winter schedule. Developing these younger prospects now ensures that we are not scrambling for replacements if injuries persist once the regular season games begin in earnest. Looking at the roster shuffle currently underway, which of these three players do you believe has the most challenging path to earning a meaningful role once they are medically cleared to return to practice? If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. We are still pushing toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and every one of you helps us get there. Go Hawks! I'll see you in the next one.